Hello and welcome to Data Planet. I'm Emma Davis, and today's guest is Lee Somerhalder, head of demand generation for Tabnine. Welcome to the show, Lee.
Hey, thanks for having me.
All right, so to start out, tell me about Tabnine. What is Tabnine?
Great question. So Tabnine was founded in 2018, and in a nutshell, it is a AI coding assistant platform. So it's an enterprise AI coding platform built for teams that basically care about like the correctness, security, and control of the data within their organization. Um, Unlike kind of generic AI code assistants, Claude, Windsurf, Cursor. Um, We operate within the organization's context. So their code base, their standards, their policies, while keeping their data fully isolated. Think about healthcare, fintech, Department of Defense. These people have um, incredible guidelines around the data structure and security. And current LLMs expose that information to the LLMs, which makes it very dangerous to use. So we have what's called an air gap solution, and it helps developers write code faster and better without introducing new risks or compliance issues, right? Or unpredictable behavior, which we see a lot in rogue LLMs.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, we are growing at an astronomical rate, but compared to the rest of the people in the industry, we're at par with growth.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. And so I imagine I could see down the road this being something that people want regardless of their compliance needs. Just like, yeah, I want it to be self-contained. I'm sure we're headed for a point where things start to go awry with some of the AI and LLM stuff, and people like the idea of that being contained. But for now, it's more high risk. We can't let our data or our code out beyond our ecosystem. That has to stay contained. Is there anything about how the product works that changes the code itself? So apart from the where the data lives, if you gave Tabnine and a tool that has the ability to do whatever with that data, if you gave them the same prompt and the same information, would they produce two different results?
That's a hard question to answer because most of it has to do with context. So, what information is it using to help create the code and improve the code base? It is a tool that can be used across the entire SDLC, sales development lifecycle. And essentially, if you all things equal, um, it has to do with the prompt you create, the code you've created, and the context you're given. So if all things were equal, yeah, you'd get a very similar outcome. Um, but what we, what our competitive advantage is really scale at the enterprise level. So 1,000 developers using this tool, and amongst those developers, the tool is learning from other developers. It's pulling from Jira tickets. It's pulling from GitHub repos to create that context to generate the most efficient and productive code for whatever solution they're trying to solve.
Nice, very cool. Um, Thank you for that overview of Tab 9. And you mentioned the high risk and compliance needs. You talked about defense. I think we've talked about like fintech being one of those, and banking, and anything to do with medical data, like HIPAA compliant stuff. And um, what does it what does it sound like for people who might not recognize, like, I am in that space? Like, what is the challenge that you solve? What does that sound like for someone? In a way that they might recognize, "Oh, wow, Tab 9 might be a fit for me."
Yeah. Has your executive team told you you can't use Copilot? Have you been part of litigation for ingesting information you shouldn't have ingested? Have you been liable for the code that you shipped? Has something caused a liability in that? Um, are you regulated by governmental standards? So, like you said, HIPAA. Have you, do you work with PII, personally identifiable information that can't be exposed outside of your organization? Um, are you just in general afraid of what could potentially happen
Yeah.
when you deploy these solutions?
So everybody, anybody, you're talking to everybody in the world who's doing any coding for their business? Got it. All right.
Absolutely, like, you're
Yeah.
responsible for that code and the outcome, and there could be downstream effects to customer service, to health, to public health, and so it's really important that we are, careful with how we use such a powerful tool.
Mhm.
We are, in a sense, only a few court cases away from having very strict regulations around how we use AI tools and the information we consume to help inform our models.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And so who are you talking to when you're asking those questions? Like, I think coders are, I say this lovingly, kind of like notoriously lazy. They're like it's that good scientist brain of like, if there's an easier way to do this, I'm not going to do the harder way on purpose. And so I imagine that pain point of like, but I want to use an AI tool because that could make my work better and easier, allow me to move faster and all that. But someone's telling me I can't. So are you talking to the actual developers or programmers, or are you talking to someone like in IT or someone in legal? Like who is that conversation actually with?
Yeah, it's a great question too because since we've been here, I've deployed this very specific ABM model, account-based marketing, that identifies the value propositions of different people in the organization and communicates those value propositions based on their role. We talk to the IT organization, but what we're finding is that all these new AI roles are showing up and they haven't existed in the past. So if you're trying to mine AI engineer or AI architect, it's so new that the variation in title that we're speaking to is a broad range.
Yeah. Yeah.
The CTO is almost always focused on productivity. Like, we have 1,000 developers. If we can save 20% of the time, that's very quantifiable ROI, and it's a business case they can make, and it's a deal that we can move forward with because it's very quantifiable. We sometimes get a lot of what we call commercial business, which is below 2,000 employees, 100 licenses, people just kind of like using the tool for educational purposes or small projects. There's an immense amount of volume for that. But our business is focused on the enterprise. So enterprise businesses, aerospace defense, kind of that global 2000 audience, senior director and above in an IT role. I also like bugging the CFO. I like every once in a while being like, you realize how much money you can save, right?
I love doing that too. I love fucking yep.
Yeah, and it's a very different campaign and messaging and positioning, but it is around you have an obligation to run the most lean organization, and from a competitive standpoint, I've got an advantage for you if you can save 50% of time, ship twice the amount of code, and improve the quality of that code. I think we got a pretty good business case here for a pilot.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And you're in kind of an interesting spot as head of demand generation there because you're fairly new to the role. You've been there for about 6 months, I think you said. So, the train's already rolling and you are hopping on. Um, what is it like trying to get the lay of the land and figure out what's working and what isn't and what you want to prioritize in your first year there?
I just thought of this, so this may be crazy, but it's like jumping on a treadmill that's going 12 miles an hour.
Excellent.
It's like you
what,
see it
what
there
could go
spinning
wrong?
and you're like, "That's pretty fast. This is moving very quickly." And that's the state of the industry, is that things are happening so quickly that you don't even have time to stop and process the one thing that came by. It is just moving so quickly. So, your first challenge is to not land on your face. So, hit the ground running is an understatement. Um so you have to really hit the ground running in the AI space just to understand who your competitors are, new competitors showing up. Businesses are understanding more and more about what AI does, which means they create new challenges and new opportunities. which changed messaging and positioning and targeting everything. So everything's moving really quickly. But at the end of the day, marketing is marketing, and you have to identify people who have a interest and propensity to buy. You have to get them content at the right place at the right time. You have to nurture their interest into a sales cycle, and then you got to prove value in like a pilot or a use case or some kind of mm, customer interaction. So, in a sense, it's business as usual. I have signals. I look at those signals. I deliver content based on those signals. I get people interested. The sales team engages with concurrent messaging, and you scale it from there. So, there are new tools. There's new ways to enrich data. There's new ways to find intent signals. There's amazing new ways to create content and distribute it at scale. So, um, it is a very exciting time to be in marketing. I've been doing this for 25 years, and I feel like I feel reinvigorated with like all of the opportunity and the tools that are out there. So in one sense, it's jumping on a treadmill going really quickly. On the other sense, it's just you know what you know and execute on the basics.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I think so one of the things that I tend to see in companies that are moving very quickly is that their marketing can be a little bit of throwing spaghetti at the wall, but then sometimes they're moving so fast they don't even check to see what sticks. It's just like I don't know, we threw all our spaghetti. It's like it's all over the place. Maybe some of this is good. Maybe I just know I know I'm throwing spaghetti. That's for sure. There's spaghetti being made and thrown. And so to what extent are you designing a careful plan that's executed and all the measurement is in place to understand what's working versus just kind of cleaning up and like, all right, let's prune some of this back so we can even see the shape of this tree, I guess is where I'm going with the pruning. But yeah, what is that like? Again, jumping on the bullet train or the treadmill or whatever.
Yeah. Um, so I think it's
I'm not trying to put you in a tough position to throw someone else under the bus in this situation. Also,
I
I'm not.
know that's the easy answer actually. So for me, analytics and performance measurement has been how I've built my career. You know, you can't improve what you can't measure. So a lot of what we do is very methodical. We use tools now that allow me to analyze an immense amount of data and condense it to actionable next steps. So what took me 4 days to aggregate in a BI tool through SQL queries just to see the data to then interpret it to what the logical next steps are is basically automated on Monday morning for me. So I use LLMs. I ingest all my data from a web performance, email performance, app performance, paid media performance, social performance. I aggregate all that in on a weekly basis, and I prompt an LLM to tell me where my most valuable opportunities are for the week. So I use Manus specifically as my LLM to help me be my strategic guide for the week on what the most important things to work on are based on what it's seeing in the data. That just condenses an immense amount of time into really, really helpful insights that allow me to make better decisions throughout the week.
And what are those measures for success? Because based on your target market, I imagine there's a lot of latency, a lot of conversations and influencing opportunities. And did that make an incremental difference or was it just kind of a touch there? So, what are you asking? What are you telling the LLM? This is what I care about, and to help me make those decisions.
Yeah. I guess 25 years doing this, I loathe attribution. Um, it is the most
Because it's
arguable.
always wrong.
Depending on what approach you take and what model
Yep.
you look at, yeah, the other one's wrong.
Yep.
So, I am over and tired of talking to executives about source attribution. I'm over it. And so we are in a position where a historical business was really focused on MQLs, SQLs, traditional lifecycle stages. and moving into an MQA, so account-based measurements, um, things that align more closely to sales analytics, more closely to revenue, right? And so small changes I'm making are to drive the business's attention to the accounts we identify, and then combining sales and marketing activities in a consistent way and a consistent messaging and consistent content to approach those target accounts. And it fundamentally changes how we measure all things. Like the analogy I use is my CEO runs the race team. He doesn't need to know about the engine. He just needs to know, are we winning or not winning? And every once in a while, he wants to come into the garage, open the hood, and be like, look at that little fancy thing moving. That looks really efficient. And I'm like, it is actually very
Yeah.
efficient.
Yeah.
But shut the hood and go back to
Yeah.
shaking hands and doing thought leadership. And so part of the trick now is I've got all these nerdy things I look at only personally. And then I have this outbound external set of metrics that I share with the sales team and the executive teams. They're very streamlined. Like these are the accounts we've identified that are doing awesome things that have a propensity to buy. We got these 5 people inside of each of those organizations. We sent LinkedIn ads, emails, and sent the sales team off to go talk to them. And oh, by the way, 40% of those identified accounts turned into meetings. And that's all you need to know. And so streamlining what they should look at, why they should look at it is what I'm going through right now. And I should have been doing this my entire career. Um, but it's really helped us avoid the CEO going, that social post really should have had a few more likes
Yep. Yep.
to, wow, we didn't know we had this level of visibility into this account.
Yeah. But I think that that speaks to the combination of you being in the right place and the culture there, because there are also like I've talked with people about like there's nothing worse to a marketer than a CEO with a great idea and like, oh, we gotta try this super cool thing. And like, oh no, it's not like please don't have a creative brain blast. But yes, them being open also to trusting you on like, this is what you need to know. That's it. Like, here you go. Here, don't even worry about that. That's not your job. That's my job. I got this. And I think that clearly, if that's working, it's because you're speaking a language that they care about and that makes sense to them. So it's not easy to do that, but
Very fast moving business. And our argument is that we don't have time to look at superficial metrics.
yeah,
So we are just as critical of our time as we are of our customers' time. And we want to be incredibly efficient. And part of that responsibility is removing the stuff that's distracting and the noise.
yeah, awesome. All right, well let's end it on that note. Lee, thank you so much for coming on Data Planet and being a guest today. I loved this conversation. Listeners, if you want to learn more about Lee and Tabnine, information will be in the show notes. Otherwise, thanks so much, Lee, and listeners, we'll talk to you next time.
Thank you so much.